You have stumbled upon an unusual signal, a transmission so different that it might have you questioning everything you think you know about the world around you. These frequencies are intermittent and unforgiving. They bring us the dark tales of folklore, the stories that fade into the night and creep back up to us in our dreams. This is Vast Unknown Radio, where what you're listening to may not be what you're hearing. Our transmitter is powered up, the antenna is tuned and aligned, the amplifier, it's humming. Tonight we examine a tradition that many would argue never existed at all. However, there is enough fragmentary writing to suggest that this tradition is not complete fantasy. Perhaps there is just enough truth in the surviving documents to give us a little bit of credence to the stories. Many cultures still engage in similar, loosely connected practices to this very day. It's a custom of faith, and perhaps that's why it's so shrouded in mystery. The secret to a peaceful afterlife, perhaps. The sacrifice of the living for the salvation of the dead. But much like the living, the dead have their own problems. Many cultures believe that the dead risk being trapped between two worlds, forced to haunt a location, or bound to the earthly realm by unfinished business. It could be that their earthly indiscretions have condemned them to an existence of eternal torment. No matter how you look at it, being dead is plagued by a myriad of complications. Perhaps this is the reason for the existence of countless customs surrounding death and burial in both the ancient and the modern world. No practice is designed to take the burden off the recently deceased, quite like the legend of the Sin Eater. Before we get started, I'd like to remind the listener that while I attempt to keep these transmissions as family and culturally friendly as possible, sometimes the topics of esoterica play to the baser instincts of humanity. The tradition of the Sin Eater, at least identifying such an entity by name, originates in the British Isles. While the very existence of this custom remains in dispute, what little evidence we have comes from the region of southern England. The Sin Eater was selected, or possibly self-appointed, from the most detestable in the community. An ugly, decrepit wretch, the most base of humanity, was often from society's lowest class. Regardless of their outward appearance, the Sin Eater performed a vital function. In the already dark time, theirs was an unholy task, the cause of horror for the righteous, civilized society. Like so many others throughout the ages, the talents of the damned are oftentimes in high demand. Everyone is willing to pay for the service of salvation, even if its very nature is unspeakable. So what were the circumstances that would bring society's most marginalized to the doorsteps of the devout? Well, upon the death of a person of prestige, the Sin Eater would make an appearance outside the home of the recently dead. As the body or casket was carried out of the home, the procession would stop, place the coffin on a makeshift stand, and pay homage to the Sin Eater. Members of the departed's family would bring forth a chunk of bread rested on a salted plate. They would also bring a wooden drinking bowl of beer and a seemingly standardized allotment of coins. These items would be passed over the corpse and into the hands of the waiting Sin Eater. The Sin Eater was said to speak an incantation over the body before consuming the offering. The physical action would then spiritually impart upon themselves the sins of the recently departed. Upon doing so, once the ritual was completed, There was no more need for the family to worry about any evil that had been committed by their loved one. The sin eater would then slip away, allegedly growing more physically detestable with every set of sins they devoured. Other accounts of the activities of the sin eater describe more intimate interactions with the family of the dead. Traditions exist that describe individuals of planning for their own deaths by setting aside specific utensils to be used by the sin eater. The sin eater, well known to the family, would be summoned to the home after death. The family of the deceased would set a plate of salt along with a candle on the chest of the departed. On top of the salt, a loaf of bread was placed alongside a bowl of ale. The sin eater would whisper over the meal and then consume it in the presence of the family. Unburdened by their carnal transgressions, the dead would now enter the kingdom of heaven. And once paid, the sin eater would again disappear into the countryside. There is lore that also suggests that not only did the sin eater take the indiscretions of the dead into themselves, they also prevented the dead from becoming the undead. It was said that with the deceased's sins absorbed by the sin eater, the departed had no reason to rise from the grave and wander the earth in discontent. Forgiven and resting peacefully, they could remain in the grave to the ease of those who were left behind. Fear of revenants returning to the land of the living was widespread from the 5th to the 15th century, or what is commonly referred to as the Middle Ages. The rising of a corpse from the grave was most likely to occur if the individual suffered a tragic or unexpected death, or they died carrying a heavy burden of sins. In the absence of absolution prior to death, the services of the sin eater quieted the minds of the living, and of course did no additional harm to the dead. Other far more vulgar practices, such as digging up, dismembering, or burning corpses, were far more destructive than a simple meal held over a body. These were serious concerns held by people of serious faith. Fear of the wandering dead has long plagued most every civilization. It is worth mentioning that in a time when the church held a monopoly on forgiveness of sins, such customs would be looked upon as heathenism. The sin eater would be forced to conceal their identity from the church authorities or most surely be executed. This reprehensible soul would wander the wilderness, much like the traditional scapegoat of biblical literature. The sin eater was never observed unless called upon for their services. Those who were found to deal with the sin eater would likely fare no better in a pious society, which of course is potentially one of the reasons that substantive documentation of the existence of such activities is quite rare. Individuals who meddled in the arcane arts often lurked on the fringes of society, sometimes by choice and other times out of necessity. These folks would have been considered to be consorting with demonic entities or even possibly in league with the devil himself. This is not a label that was taken lightly during this age. A violent, unsanctified death was but one fate such individuals could face. But the sin eater fulfilled a unique role and was both vilified and secretly venerated at the same time. Who else would risk their own salvation for the salvation of others? They were a necessary evil. And it's always better to face the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. Nevertheless, the sin eater or a similar custom likely existed, and their power held sway over those who thought that their loved ones were to be damned. Did the sin eater truly save any souls, or did they simply feast upon the naivete of the desperate? Such is the question about many practitioners of the darker arts. Perceived wisdom can easily morph into power if used against those with a weaker mind. There are few things more terrifying than losing a loved one, much less the thought of that loved one being tormented for all eternity. Individuals who ply authority and power over those eternal circumstances are always likely to be revered and sought after for their guidance. The reality of how much influence those individuals actually hold is quite questionable. Faith is greater than any one person. The truth of existence is even far greater than that. So that concludes our transmission for this evening. Let us close with this reminder. The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. Vast Unknown Radio is written, curated, and produced by me. If you happen to wander the interwebs and stumble across this particular story in a slightly different yet original written format, please don't shout plagiarism. That, too, was written by me. As always, my research assistant is Gypsy. On the soundboard, well, that's DJ Chainsaw Massacre. Special thanks to co.ag Music. Tune in next time for more tales of the esoteric and the unusual. And maybe, just maybe, our signals will cross again. Thanks for listening. This has been Vast Unknown Radio.